Imagine waking up to a single announcement that instantly divides the tennis world. Not because a Grand Slam champion had lifted another trophy, not because a world number one had broken another record, but because one young player, without winning Wimbledon itself, had suddenly become the biggest story of the entire grass court season. That was exactly the reaction when the WTA revealed its latest fan-voted honor. One phrase immediately began circulating across social media: Star of the Swing. And attached to that title was a name that has become impossible to ignore over the past year: Alex Eala. For some fans, it felt like the perfect ending to an unforgettable grass court campaign. For others, it raised an even bigger question. How could a player who didn't leave Wimbledon holding the championship trophy finish ahead of players who actually did? Even more surprisingly, the discussion wasn't simply about one award. It quickly became a debate about what truly defines greatness in modern tennis. Is it only about collecting trophies? Or can one extraordinary journey, filled with breakthrough performances, fearless victories, and unforgettable moments, resonate more deeply than a single championship run? That question is exactly why today's story is so fascinating. Because this isn't simply about a fan vote. It's about momentum. It's about belief. And it's about a young athlete who seems to be changing the expectations surrounding Philippine tennis every time she steps onto the court. Over the past several months, Alex Eala has transformed from a promising prospect into one of the most talked about players on the WTA Tour. Every tournament seemed to add another chapter, another upset, another headline, another reason for tennis fans around the world to pay attention. What made this stretch especially remarkable wasn't just one match. It was a consistency of her performances against elite competition. Week after week, she continued proving that her earlier breakthroughs were not isolated surprises, but part of a much larger evolution. That growing confidence became impossible to ignore during the grass court season. Grass has traditionally been considered one of the most demanding surfaces in professional tennis. The shorter rallies, lower bounce, quicker movement, and constant pressure reward players who adapt quickly. Many experienced professionals spend years learning how to succeed there, yet Eala appeared increasingly comfortable every time she walked onto the grass. Each victory strengthened the belief that her game was evolving faster than many experts had predicted, and as those victories accumulated, something else began happening. The conversation around Alex Eala started extending far beyond individual match results. Fans weren't simply asking whether she could win another round. They were beginning to wonder just how high her ceiling might actually be. Could she become a regular contender at the biggest tournaments? Could she eventually challenge the established stars of women's tennis? Could this be the beginning of something much larger than anyone anticipated? Those questions followed her into every event. Every appearance suddenly carried new expectations. Every match became another opportunity to measure just how much progress she had made. By the time the grass season reached its conclusion, there was no longer any doubt that Eala had become one of the defining stories of the summer. Then came the WTA's fan vote. On paper, many observers expected players who captured the sport's biggest titles during the swing to dominate the results. After all, championships usually speak louder than anything else. But sports are rarely decided by paper alone. Fans remember emotion. They remember courage. They remember breakthrough moments that make them feel like they are witnessing the beginning of history. Sometimes, one player's journey captures the imagination of millions more powerfully than a trophy ever could. That appears to be exactly what happened here. The announcement immediately sparked celebration across the Philippines, while also creating spirited debate throughout the international tennis community. Supporters argue that Eala's rise represented the most compelling story of the entire grass season. Critics question whether narrative should outweigh championship success. Both perspectives fuel one of the most engaging discussions women's tennis has seen in weeks. But here's the interesting part. The award itself may not end up being the biggest story, because once you begin examining everything Alex Eala accomplished before that announcement, every upset, every milestone, every difficult challenge overcome, you start realizing that this recognition didn't emerge overnight. Instead, it was built match by match, tournament by tournament, over months of relentless progress. And that's where this story becomes even more compelling. Because to understand why so many fans rally behind Alex Eala, we first need to go back to where this remarkable grass court journey truly began. To understand why this recognition generated so much attention, you have to look beyond a single headline and examine the journey that unfolded throughout the grass court season. For Alex Eala, every tournament represented more than another chance to win matches. It was another opportunity to answer a question that had followed her for years. Could her aggressive baseline game translate successfully onto grass? Historically, grass has rewarded players who think quickly, move decisively, and stay composed under relentless pressure. Unlike clay, where points can develop patiently, or hard courts, where players often settle into longer exchanges, grass frequently demands instant decisions. There is very little time to recover from hesitation. That is why every victory on the surface carries extra significance. Early in the swing, Eala wasn't entering tournaments surrounded by overwhelming expectations. Most conversations centered around established stars who had already proven themselves on grass. Names with deeper experience naturally attracted the spotlight, but as matches unfolded, something quietly began changing. Instead of simply participating, Eala started competing with remarkable confidence. Her movement looked sharper. Her anticipation improved. Perhaps most importantly, she appeared increasingly comfortable taking the initiative instead of reacting to her opponents. Few people noticed one crucial detail at first. The improvements weren't dramatic, overnight transformations. They were small adjustments that accumulated with every match. She became more willing to attack shorter balls. She trusted her first strike more often. She showed greater patience when constructing points without abandoning her aggressive identity. Those subtle changes gradually altered the rhythm of her matches. Opponents who expected long defensive rallies suddenly found themselves under pressure much earlier in exchanges. That evolution forced many players to adjust their own tactics. And once that happened, confidence naturally followed. Confidence, after all, is one of the most valuable assets any professional athlete can possess. When players believe they belong on the biggest stages, their decision-making often becomes clearer. Shots are struck with conviction. Movement becomes instinctive. Pressure transforms from something intimidating into something motivating. Throughout the grass season, Eala appeared to embrace that mentality. Instead of looking overwhelmed by high-profile opponents, she seemed energized by the opportunity. Every challenge became another chance to demonstrate her growth. That mindset resonated strongly with tennis fans around the world. Because sports audiences often connect most deeply with athletes who visibly evolve in front of them, people enjoy watching potential become reality. And Eala's journey increasingly reflected exactly that kind of transformation. Meanwhile, the competition around her remained exceptionally strong. Several players produced impressive performances throughout the swing, each creating memorable moments of their own. Among those attracting significant attention was Linda Noskova, whose own success added another compelling storyline to the season. Her achievements naturally earned widespread recognition, and many observers expected players with major tournament success to dominate fan discussions. From a purely traditional perspective, that expectation made perfect sense. Championships usually become the defining memories of any tennis season. Yet fan engagement often tells a more complicated story. Modern audiences don't simply reward trophies. They respond to emotion. They celebrate resilience. They remember breakthrough moments that feel larger than the scoreboard itself. That distinction may help explain why conversations surrounding Eala continued expanding even after individual tournaments concluded. Her performances sparked discussions across multiple countries. Supporters praised her fearless approach. Former skeptics began acknowledging how rapidly her game appeared to be developing. Young, aspiring players saw someone proving that patience and persistence could eventually lead to opportunities on the sport's biggest stages. For Philippine tennis supporters, every successful week carried additional meaning. It wasn't only about individual victories. It represented continued evidence that a Filipino player could compete confidently within the highest levels of women's tennis. That broader significance created an emotional connection extending far beyond statistics. Every positive result became a source of national pride. Every difficult match became another chapter in a story that many fans had followed since Eala's junior career. As excitement grew, social media amplified every moment. Highlights spread rapidly. Discussions became increasingly international. Supporters from different countries joined conversations that previously might have remained limited to dedicated tennis followers. That expanding audience is important because fan-voted recognition depends on more than technical excellence. Visibility matters. Connection matters. The ability to inspire people matters. By the end of the grass swing, Alex Eala had accomplished something that cannot always be measured by rankings or trophies alone. She had become one of the season's most compelling stories. And when the WTA invited fans to celebrate the player who best represented the grass court swing, many supporters clearly remembered not only who won tournaments, but who captured their imagination. However, that only answers part of the question. The much bigger discussion begins when we compare Eala's rise with the established stars she is now being mentioned alongside. Was this recognition simply the result of fan enthusiasm? Or does it signal that Alex Eala has officially entered a completely different tier of expectations on the WTA Tour? The answer becomes even more fascinating when we take a closer look at her game, her long-term development, and what this momentum could mean for the remainder of her season. Recognition in professional tennis is often measured by trophies, rankings, and statistics. Those are the numbers that fill record books and define careers. But every so often, a player's impact extends beyond those traditional measures. They become the athlete everyone is talking about, regardless of whether they lifted the biggest trophy that week. That appears to be where Alex Eala now finds herself. The WTA's fan recognition wasn't simply about celebrating one tournament. It reflected how the tennis community viewed her entire grass court campaign. Fans weren't voting for a single afternoon or one unforgettable shot. They were responding to a season-long story that steadily gained momentum with each passing week. And that's an important distinction. Momentum is one of the most powerful forces in professional sports. Once an athlete begins earning the confidence of fans, media, and fellow competitors, expectations change almost overnight. Instead of asking whether they belong at the highest level, people begin asking how far they can go. That shift may sound subtle, but inside the locker room, it changes everything. Opponents prepare differently. Tournament organizers promote your matches more heavily. Crowds become larger. Television coverage increases. Every appearance carries more attention than the last. For young players, managing that spotlight can be just as challenging as facing elite opponents across the net. Alex Eala now appears to be entering exactly that stage of her career. Every tournament she enters will likely attract more viewers than before. Every draw will generate discussion. Every potential matchup with an established star will immediately become headline material. That's the price and the privilege of becoming one of the sport's fastest-rising names. But here's where things become even more interesting. When analysts evaluate Eala's game, they don't usually focus on just one spectacular weapon. Instead, they often point toward her overall balance. She plays with controlled aggression, looking to dictate points without abandoning consistency. She has shown a willingness to construct rallies patiently before choosing the right moment to attack. That balance is especially valuable because modern women's tennis rewards players who can adapt rather than rely on a single pattern. Flexibility often separates good players from great ones. Every opponent presents a different puzzle. Some overwhelm with power. Others rely on exceptional movement. Some extend rallies until mistakes appear. Others attack immediately from the first ball. The players who continue climbing the rankings are usually those capable of adjusting their approach without losing confidence. Throughout the grass swing, Eala appeared increasingly comfortable making those adjustments. There were moments when she absorbed pressure instead of forcing low percentage winners. Other times, she stepped inside the baseline and dictated rallies from the very beginning. That tactical maturity may be one of the biggest reasons so many observers believe her progress is sustainable rather than temporary. Because confidence alone isn't enough. The tour eventually exposes every weakness. Players study video. Coaches identify patterns. Opponents prepare specific strategies. Anyone can surprise the field for 1 week. Remaining competitive month after month requires constant evolution. That is the challenge now facing Alex Eala. The encouraging sign is that her development has rarely appeared rushed. Instead of trying to transform overnight, her improvements have looked gradual and deliberate. Each tournament seems to reveal another small step forward. A little more composure, under pressure, a little more confidence serving in crucial moments, a little more patience when momentum swings against her. Those incremental gains often become the foundation of lasting success. And then there's the mental side of the game. Professional tennis is as much psychological as it is physical. Every player experiences difficult stretches. Every season includes disappointing losses. What separates elite competitors is rarely the absence of setbacks. It's their response to them. One reason fans have connected so strongly with Eala is that her journey has never been presented as effortless. She has experienced challenges. She has faced expectations. She has dealt with the pressure that naturally comes with representing an entire nation eager to see one of its brightest sporting talents succeed. Rather than shrinking from those expectations, she has continued embracing them. That resilience may ultimately prove just as valuable as any forehand or backhand, because careers are rarely defined by perfect weeks. They are defined by how players continue growing after every victory and every defeat. The fan vote itself also highlights something changing within modern tennis. Supporters today don't only celebrate champions. They celebrate stories. They follow personalities. They invest emotionally in athletes whose journeys inspire them. In that environment, Alex Eala has become much more than another promising player. She has become someone whose matches people actively seek out, someone whose progress fans genuinely want to follow, someone whose next tournament suddenly feels significant before the first ball is even struck. That kind of connection cannot be manufactured. It has to be earned over time. Still, the biggest challenge may lie ahead. Recognition creates expectations. Expectations create pressure, and pressure reveals whether momentum can become consistency. The grass court season may have elevated Alex Eala into the global spotlight, but the rest of the year will determine whether this breakthrough represents a memorable chapter or the beginning of an entirely new era in her career. And that's exactly where the story now turns, because the bigger picture extends far beyond one award, one season, or one headline. It raises a fascinating question about what comes next, not only for Alex Eala, but for the future of Philippine tennis itself. Every breakthrough in professional tennis eventually reaches a defining moment, not necessarily a championship match, not even a career-high ranking. Sometimes, the defining moment is when expectations permanently change. That is where Alex Eala appears to be today. Only a short time ago, conversations surrounding her focused almost entirely on potential. Analysts discuss what she might become. Fans wonder when she would begin challenging established names consistently. Every tournament felt like another learning experience. Now, the conversation sounds completely different. People are no longer asking whether she belongs on the biggest stages. Instead, they're asking how soon she can become a regular contender whenever she enters a major tournament. That shift may be the most important development of all, because once expectations rise, every match carries greater significance. Victories become confirmation. Losses become learning opportunities that attract national headlines. The margin for error becomes much smaller. That is a reality faced by every rising star in professional sports. The encouraging news for Eala is that her recent progress suggests she understands exactly what that responsibility requires. Throughout the grass court season, she demonstrated more than technical improvement. She showed maturity. She remained composed during high-pressure moments. She appeared willing to adapt rather than stubbornly forcing one style of play. Those qualities often determine who continues climbing after an initial breakthrough. Talent opens a door. Consistency keeps it open. Of course, the road ahead will not become easier. If anything, it becomes considerably more demanding. Future opponents will arrive with detailed scouting reports. Every strength will be analyzed. Every tendency will be studied. Every serve placement, return pattern, and rally preference will become part of opponents' preparation. That is exactly what happens when a player becomes one of the tour's most recognizable emerging names. Success creates attention. Attention creates preparation. Preparation creates tougher challenges. The cycle never stops. Yet many of the sport's greatest careers have been built by embracing that reality instead of fearing it. Every champion has experienced the transition from hunter to hunted. The question now is whether Alex Eala can continue evolving quickly enough to stay one step ahead. If her recent trajectory is any indication, there are reasons for optimism. One of her greatest strengths has been her willingness to improve incrementally. Rather than searching for dramatic overnight transformations, she has gradually refined different areas of her game. That steady development often produces longer-lasting success because it is built on strong fundamentals rather than temporary momentum. Another encouraging sign is her competitive mindset. Throughout recent tournaments, she has looked increasingly comfortable sharing the court with players who possess far more experience. That confidence cannot be underestimated. Professional tennis is filled with gifted athletes whose abilities are limited by hesitation. Believing you belong is often the first step toward proving that you do. For young fans watching around the world, especially those in the Philippines, Eala's journey represents something larger than wins and losses. She has become evidence that persistence, disciplined development, and patience can eventually create opportunities on the sport's biggest stages. Her rise has inspired conversations far beyond tennis courts. It has encouraged young athletes to dream bigger. It has given supporters another reason to believe that Philippine tennis can continue expanding its presence internationally. That impact may ultimately become one of the most meaningful aspects of her career. Because while championships define champions, inspiration creates legacies. As for the WTA's Star of the Swing recognition, opinions will naturally differ. Some fans will always believe championships should outweigh every other accomplishment. Others will argue that breakthrough stories deserve recognition when they capture the imagination of the global tennis community. Both viewpoints are understandable. After all, sports have always balanced measurable achievement with emotional impact. But regardless of where someone stands in that debate, one conclusion is difficult to ignore. Alex Eala has become one of the most compelling young figures in women's tennis. She has earned the attention of fans around the world. She has shown that she can compete with confidence on one of the sport's most demanding surfaces. And perhaps most importantly, she has ensured that every tournament she enters from this point forward will carry greater anticipation than the last. The next chapter of her career is now waiting. The hard court season will present new challenges, new opponents, new opportunities to continue building momentum. Whether this remarkable grass court campaign becomes a foundation of an even bigger breakthrough remains to be seen. Only time and performances on the court will provide that answer. But one thing is already clear. Alex Eala is no longer simply a promising young talent hoping to make an impression. She has become a player people expect to watch. A player capable of generating excitement before a tournament even begins. And a player whose journey is attracting attention from tennis fans across the globe. If she continues developing at the pace we've witnessed over recent months, today's recognition may eventually be remembered not as the peak of her rise, but as one of the earliest signs that a new era was beginning. For now, the spotlight is firmly on Alex Eala. The expectations are higher than ever, and the tennis world will be watching closely to see what she does next. Because if the grass court swing taught us anything, it's this. The biggest stories in tennis don't always begin with a trophy. Sometimes they begin with a player who captures the imagination of millions and refuses to let go. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Alex Eala's remarkable rise and want more fact-based tennis analysis, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next report. We'll continue following every major development in Alex Eala's career and bring you balanced, in-depth coverage of the biggest stories in world tennis.